Welcome to One More Thing. I'm Nathan Thompson. This week we're talking Oklahoma. Let's call this episode my love letter to Oklahoma culture. I've long had a theory that Oklahoma has a bigger impact on American culture than you would expect for a state its size, with a population of right around 4 million people. Oklahoma has produced some huge figures in our country's culture, going back to Will Rogers and Woody Guthrie, Jim Thorpe and Mickey Mantle. The Tulsa Sound shaped American music. More recently, Garth Brooks and Carrie Underwood are huge names. Bill Hader, James Marsden, Olivia Munn, just a few of the many Oklahoma actors to hit it big. Historic events, too, like the Trail of Tears, the Land Run, the Dust Bowl, the Oklahoma City bombing. Big names and bigger events from a state squarely in the middle, population-wise. My guest to talk about all of it is Tyler Parker, a staff writer at The Ringer and author of A Little Blood and Dancing, his debut novel, a book rooted deeply in Oklahoma. Tyler grew up in Fort Gibson. He's lived in Chicago, New York, and L.A., but still carries that Oklahoma pride wherever he goes. And he has a good sense of how our state is viewed across the country. We talk about why Oklahoma seems to punch above its weight in its cultural impact, how the state's history and humor mix into its art, and what being an Oklahoman looks like when you're not in the state. This is One More Thing with Nathan Thompson. All right, Tyler Parker, thanks for joining us here on One More Thing.
Oh, happy to be here, man. This is awesome. Great getting to talk to you.
All right, cool. Now, my topic, of course, this week is Oklahoma's cultural impact on the country as a whole, and is it outsized to a state with such a little population as far compared to other states? You grew up in Fort Gibson, you've lived in Chicago, you lived in New York, you've lived in LA now. Do you think that thesis is correct?
I think so. I think people from Oklahoma have had a far greater effect on culture, I think, than people who aren't from Oklahoma would realize. You know what I mean? Like I think people from Oklahoma are very good at knowing who is from Oklahoma, you know what I mean? And making sure to, at least if they're like me, it's always like, haters from Tulsa, or like that, there's always that sort of lurking in the background, oh, you like Garth? Well, he's yeah. Ever heard of Yukon? Like just I feel like I'm that way. Other Oklahoma people that I've been around I feel like have a similar kind of feel where there's a pride, that's coming out a little bit.
Yeah, I know. My wife says that about me because she's not from Oklahoma. She's from Milwaukee. She says I should be the Chamber of Commerce of Tulsa, because you always do that. You bring up whenever you mentioned Bill Hader. You can go on and on in sports and entertainment, music. Garth Brooks, it doesn't get much bigger than that when you look at record sales. You've got Ron Howard as a director. You could go on and on and on. Mickey Mantle in sports. What do you think it is about Oklahoma that kind of causes it to have this outsized cultural impact?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's probably something to how the general vibe is kind of keep your head down and do the work, There's don't rest on your laurels, don't get too big for your britches kind of thing. I think that uh kind of keep your head down and keep going after whatever you're going after. Um, I think I would imagine there's something to that. People in Oklahoma work hard, you know what I mean? And I think I think there's something to that, you know?
And we're just talking about famous people, but kind of the events, you go all the way back to the Land Run when the state was formed, the Dust Bowl, Route 66 going through here. There's some major cultural events, and even on the negative side, of course, the Oklahoma City bombing was a huge story nationally, and still is, as we just had the 30th anniversary of that. These big events, have they kind of shaped the culture of Oklahoma and led kind of to these famous people we're talking about?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, it's like a state of, stories. Like this happened. This I think there's there are these seminal events that can kind of take on this grander kind of epic feel that the stories of them get passed down. There's I think there's an appreciation for that in the state. I think Oklahoma, it's not a state that gets talked about a lot on the national stage, right? And so Oklahomans have been having to carry the flag and get the megaphone out and tell their own state's history because they're not going to get, you know, the Hollywood treatment that some of these other that Texas gets, right? Like so it's I think there's something to that.
I mentioned this in the intro to our interview before you joined us, but one of the reasons I thought you'd be a perfect guest for this, obviously, you have a love for Oklahoma and you seem to have an affinity for Fort Gibson, and then but you've been all over the country, being in Chicago for more than 5 years, doing improv, getting to meet so many different people there, going to Columbia and New York, meeting so many people there, and now in LA, and also, of course, you work at The Ringer, one of the biggest websites for both sports but also culture, and also we have this little thing here called A Little Blood and Dancing. We got some
Oh, look at
here
you.
debut novel. Now, this especially, I mean, it's a great book for anyone to read. I loved it. But if you're from Oklahoma, it's definitely a special feel because I could probably just open a random page here and we have a very specific reference to some sort of Oklahoma place or event or something like that. It's all throughout this book, and it's place obviously set in Oklahoma. Why did you decide that you wanted your first book to be like that?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is it's what I know best, right? Like, right where you're from. But no, I wanted to, kind of put the state on a pedestal a little bit and have a lot of little inside things in there that if you don't need to know that they're the real thing from Oklahoma, but if you have stopped at a Charlie's Chicken before, then it'll make you feel good to read that the characters are eating there, that sort of thing. But yeah, it was fun to uh it was fun in researching the book. Like, I mean, one of the pretend restaurants that's in the book is uh this barbecue joint that a couple of the characters go to, and the one of the main shticks of that place is that on the ceiling are a bunch of different pictures of these sort of Oklahoma famous people or sort of Oklahoma adjacent people. And so just getting to kind of, you know, run through a laundry list from like the Tall Chiefs to, Rocky Calmus. Like it was fun to try to kind of get the scope. You know what I mean?
And although you live in LA, you did come here to Tulsa for a book signing. Why was that important for you to do?
Oh, I just yeah, you know, I Oklahoma means so much to me, obviously, and when Magic City Books, when they reached out about the possibility of doing something like that, it was a quick yes for me. I love the state. Obviously, got a lot of family and friends that still live there, and so it was a way for some of them to be able to come up and see kind of what I'm doing now, that sort of thing. And yeah, just special to kind of get to celebrate that with them and to get to do it in a place that, you know, Tulsa's referenced in the book. You know what I mean? Like they, well, again, the baseball game they go to winds up being a Red Hawks game. Or maybe at the time, maybe they were the 89ers at the time. I can't remember. I need to go back and read my own book. But yeah, like I wanted to have these specific, you know, not just talk about like the state as like this vague sort of thing, or like they live in this county in this town, and then don't explore the other stuff in it. Because like when you're in Oklahoma and you're in different locations in Oklahoma, they they're like Oklahoma-ness is constantly celebrated. You know what I mean? Like there's like there's state pride is everywhere in Oklahoma, and so that it kind of that would inform, um, writing the book and everything like that.
The book has a lot of humor in it. It's also at points very sad. Is that a mixture that you find is kind of common in Oklahoma?
Oh, yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, I think that's common in a lot of places in this country, but I think it's definitely that, the marriage of those feelings, I think, are and that happens a lot, I think, in Oklahoma. A lot of very sad things have happened in Oklahoma, you know what I mean? Like, the what's happened to the Native American population across the country is horrific, and the removals and everything like that, and just the very but there was a land run. There's a part of that that is obviously very messed up, right? Like that were taking this land from these people who um, had every right to be able to keep it, and that's like there's the silliness of the land run and people cheating and going across early and running their horses. Like there's there's the fun stuff, but it feels like the sad stuff is just a reality there. But it felt like it made it more true to kind of how things actually are. There are sad things and good things, and oftentimes they are right up against each other. They happen one after the other, or at the same time in weird ways. So yeah, I wanted to kind of do my best to show that.
In your time in Chicago, New York, LA, your friends there, people who run around in your circles, do you think being from Oklahoma gives you a different perspective than maybe some of your people that you're friends with who aren't from Oklahoma?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like it. It if I'm not the first person that someone has met from Oklahoma, I'm definitely one of. It's often it's not often I meet somebody who has a bunch of experience in Oklahoma, um, or any. You know what I mean? Like it's often like we drove through there once to it's like that sort of um, and you watch them like trying to grab onto any memory in their head of the state, and that sort of thing. um I think it definitely yeah, you can't help but see things a little bit uh differently just because you've been exposed to a different way of doing things, a different it's just completely different to live in a small town in Oklahoma and then to live in New York or Chicago. There's some similarities, but it's it's such an other world, in a lot of respects. And so I wish that, you know, people that live in cities would have to spend a lot of time out in rural areas and then vice versa. Like people in rural areas have to spend some time in the cities, just sort of understand, get the actual, this is what it's like, not the, people screaming on TV versions of things like that sort of thing. Um,
Yeah,
but
might bring us together a little more, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
My how you're describing it kinda sounds like, in New York and LA, you're kind of exotic being from Oklahoma.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like there's a lot of like in conversation they start, going like, so where are you from? Where I'm hearing I'm detecting an accent. Where are you from? And as always they can never like place the accent or anything like that. So it's just sort of, so he's from the country somewhere. Um and then it's always like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm from Oklahoma." It's like, "Oh, okay." I don't think I've ever met anybody from Oklahoma. That's always sort of that.
What's the wildest kind of preconception people have had about Oklahoma or thing that they thinks happens currently in Oklahoma?
I mean, the craziest one was like one of my first uh, classes at Second City. There was a woman in there who sort of sincerely asked if, like, we were all still living in teepees down there, and that was, I told her, no, we got electricity 5 years ago, so we've already been able to kind of get out of the teepees. Um, we're hoping to get cars soon, that sort of thing.
We're almost there.
Yeah, yeah, but there's there's certainly people there who do know how it is, and sort of understand the culture and everything like that. But then, yeah, you'll run into some people that yeah, you are an alien to them. You know what I mean?
Now, I've run into a few times covering the Thunder and their playoff run the last 2 seasons. Obviously, I know you're a big Thunder fan. It's a big deal for you, but has their championship and kind of their emergence as one of the best teams in the NBA again after a decade later, has that changed the perception of Oklahoma at all, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think they are sort of more uh more in the conversation, I guess. Just the notion of the city at all is like actually, you know, on in people's mouths. I think that's definitely something. To me, the Thunder has always been kind of a thing that people can grab onto and know that, and they'll use that with me to try to make some sort of connection because that's kind of the one thing that they know about Oklahoma. So they'll be like, "Oh, the Thunder are looking pretty, blah, whatever, whatever, whatever." And so, no, I I think it's the I think the Thunder organization generally is considered to be like the fact that the Thunder are in Oklahoma City and all that, everybody was mad about them coming from Seattle. But I think now when people think about just the Thunder in general, it's mainly positive, right? Like I don't it would I we would I, there are always going to be haters and things like that, but it seems like people have a lot of respect for the way that they go about things.
Yeah, you're talking, but your boss, Bill Simmons, was someone who was not real happy about them leaving Seattle, but it seems like they're positive with them right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's hard, not a lot of holes to poke right now. You know what I mean? There's like the boat's looking pretty good. So yeah, TBD. But yeah, right now, I think if you had a bunch of negative thoughts about the situation, you would just seem psychotic. You know?
Now, as an Oklahoman who's traveled all over the country, lived all over the country, do you think Oklahomans who have spent basically their entire lives in Oklahoma, do they understand this impact that we're talking about of the culture of Oklahoma outside of Oklahoma?
I don't know. I mean, it maybe maybe they kind of they can't know how often these people, things, pieces of art, songs, whatever, how often they kind of appear on a daily basis in places other than the place that they came from. You know what I mean? So maybe there's something there. But I mean, even when I was a kid and like I went to college in Oklahoma too, and the whole time I was there, I feel like you could get a sense for like these are the people that are making enough of a footprint that their stuff is starting to get out a little bit and be known by people just outside of their little region. You could get some sense for that for sure, just because, and I think it's probably easier now just because the internet is so much bigger now than it was then, and it's easier to go find things that are blowing up now than it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I
and
Yeah.
when I was a kid, culture started on the East and West Coast and worked its way into Oklahoma, right? Now
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
culture is everywhere at once, right by the head.
Totally. No, totally. That yeah, when I've even when I was a kid, it was, you would sort of be watching like Laguna Beach, and then everyone would start dressing like the kids from Laguna Beach, like after that first season, not realizing that like those kids were dressing like that when they shot that, it was probably shot that like 3 or 4 years ago. And so it only arrived, you know what I mean? Like, but that I think you're right that the internet has kind of closed that gap a little bit.
I remember you talked about Oklahoma kind of culture showing up in places you don't expect in other parts of the country. I remember, it was probably 10, 12 years ago. I was on a vacation in New York and I went to the Museum of Modern Art, walked in there and they had a huge display on Frank Lloyd Wright. I'm from Bartlesville. They had a huge model of the Price Tower there. They
Yeah,
had
yeah, yeah.
bikes, and I was like, I see this in real life in my hometown, and now it's in MoMA in New York City. And of course, I took a picture with it, but things like that. Kind of
Totally.
you're in Oklahoma and you see something like that.
No, I mean, at the, I think it was I think it was at the MoMA too. For me, it might have been one of the other museums in New York, but walking in and seeing a TC Cannon painting, and getting to kind of take that in person, not even knowing that it was there, and then getting to um it saying in his little write up that he's from Oklahoma and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, those sorts of things will always um feel yeah, yeah. I don't know why you like. One of the pieces I wrote this past season, um, the Ringer was doing like a week kind of on like expansion teams and things like that, and so they wanted me to write a piece, kind of a ode to big country kind of thing, and
Reeves, OSU star in the 90s.
yeah, yeah, and one of the things that I wrote in there was like I was sort of trying to figure out like what is it about someone being from where you're from that makes you, other than the obvious stuff, like what is the thing that's not just like, oh, I'm from the same place that he is, but and I'm not sure that I'm exactly right, but I think it's something like, like it what I write in the piece is like, it showed me that like the world was also mine. That there's it I think it you see that there are things that are possible um for someone who grew up in similar circumstances.
This is kind of a tough question, but you stayed connected with Oklahoma. Who do you have anyone in mind or people in your mind or things in your mind is kind of the next wave out of Oklahoma of cultural impact across the country?
I mean, I think like Sterling Harjo is like obviously been doing some interesting stuff, and he's got a new show coming out, I think on FX with Ethan Hawke, that seems like it's going to be awesome. I think that he's somebody that as his star continues to grow, especially if they keep filming stuff in the state and everything, um, I think he's well on his way to being one of the ones. Yeah,
He would have probably been a good guest on this theme of the podcast too, because he's someone who's hit it big with Reservation Dogs, who's overwhelmed. I mean, just the reviews for that were amazing for him.
yeah,
Uh, and he shot that here in Green Country. He's shot his He's got Ethan Hawke and Gene Triplehorn and Tim Blake Nelson, the last two both from Tulsa.
yeah,
But yeah, Sterling Harjo would definitely be a good one because he seems committed to even though he has hit it big, to still doing projects.
yeah. Which I love that, man. Like it's smack dab in the middle of the country. You know what I mean? There's just it's it's greener than anyone realizes. It's the at least in green country, right in the Northeast, like there's a lot of rolling hills, right? Just the rivers, the lakes. You like there's it's much more cinematic than I think people give it credit for being.
And the sunsets, right?
Yeah, the sunsets, man. Everything like, it's a good thing that everything gets out of this guy's way and just lets it do its thing, you know? Like, that's what I want.
And then just a few words for people who haven't been to Oklahoma or don't know Oklahoma. How do you sum it up? How do you describe it for them?
Oh, wow. Um, Small but mighty. Uh, and, just, like, listen to how the people talk, like, enjoy how people talk and, um, the, uh the pace, like, enjoy, um, try to, embrace not being in a hurry, that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like, just so that there's a chill kind of, vibe a little bit that I think people would do well to use themselves sometimes.
And put you on the spot here because I didn't give you any warning, but at the end of these podcasts, I like to, it's called One More Thing. I like to get the one thing that's been on my guest's mind lately. It doesn't have to be about Oklahoma or whatever, just the thing that's been in your mind lately, you've been thinking a lot about. Is there something up there?
I've been weirdly thinking a lot about the Cohen brothers lately.
There you go.
I've been reading a lot of their scripts, and yeah, I mean, obviously they're incredible, but reading their scripts in particular is you realize the attention to detail and just the facility, not just like the dialogue is incredible, but even the descriptions between the scenes, stage directions, even things like that. They're paying attention to the words there too, and there's something even literary about the screenplays. And so I've been thinking about that a little bit.
It's interesting because when you had your book signing at Circle Cinema, you played Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
When you're reading these, are you reading these scripts just for your own pleasure, or is it to, you think, help with your writing, or what's the reason
But
for
both. I think that, you try to steal from the best, right? That's what everybody always in school told me, like, all art is made by people who liked something before them and was like, I want to try to do something like that. And um the so yeah, there's definitely an element of it that is you're never like never going to be able to be them, nor would you want to be, right? Like, you want to be your own thing. But um that when you read somebody like them that are sort of like operating at the pinnacle, there's something about watching people with the utmost confidence and the utmost ability, like, able to ride that and do whatever they want on the page, you know what I mean?
it?
And you kind of feel that control from them whenever you're reading it. And that sort of feeling, watching that and trying to kind of, when you're writing your own stuff, see if you can get to a place in your mind where you're that free too. You know what I mean? Like, if that's a very in the clouds answer, but hopefully that's hopefully that's okay.
That's great. It's great talking Coen Brothers with you. It's great talking Oklahoma with you. Tyler Parker, everybody out there, go pick up a little Blood and Dancing right here. Great book. You should read it. And I appreciate you joining us.
Oh man, happy to. Always good to talk to you.
That was Tyler Parker, staff writer at The Ringer and author of A Little Blood and Dancing. I loved hearing his perspective on what it means to come from Oklahoma and how the state's history and humor shape Oklahoma culture, which ripples out into the wider culture. From music to sports to literature, Oklahoma seems to have a way of punching above its weight. Thanks for listening to One More Thing. I'll be here next week for another conversation.